On the morning of May 9th, 1968, the Kray twins and other members of the firm were arrested by Nipper Reed and his team and charged with the murders of George Cornell, Frank Mitchell, and Jack the Hat McVitie. The trial of the Old Bailey was presided over by Justice Melford Stevenson and became one of the longest and most expensive criminal trials in English legal history.
When I started the investigation, I'd become a superintendent and posted to the murder squad. I'd made it. And then I went in to see the assistant commissioner, and he said to me, congratulations. Now, Mr. Reed, he said, I want you to do the Krays.
I do know that I'm told anyway, I'm pretty sure it's correct, that there's orders from the very top people to lock us away. And make sure we were locked away.
I think we thought the best evidence probably was Cornell. If we won that and then went on to McVitie, the publicity that was associated with the first trial was such that it could be said we couldn't get a fair trial on the second one. And that was the arrangement that we said, well, we'll join the two murders and we'll leave Mitchell out, and then we'll have a separate trial for Mitchell. And that's what we did.
Well, I think it's all meant to intermingle. That was the idea of it. So we'd overlap, each trial would overlap another one. Each case would overlap and throw some badness off.
Did your counsel ever suggest that you should have had separate trials?
There was some mention of it, but not enough.
It was quite obvious they should have been tried separately. And I moved the court, moved Milford. They should try them separately, but I got him to stop the trial so that I could take the case to the Court of Appeal. But they likewise refused. Backroom talk with the Court of Appeal judges, clerks. The government behind this the Court of Appeal weren't going to interfere.
Really, it was the fact that these two murders were alike in so many ways because they'd been committed by criminals who were conjoined, not only because they were brothers and twins, but because they were leading the same gang, and that there was the same motive, or there was the lack of motive that impelled us to say, well, there is a relationship between the two that can be established, and it was accepted.
I think they had a good chance of getting off if they'd been tried separately, and I don't mean the two twins separately, but the two murders separately.
There were 10 men in the dock. Only 2, Ronnie Kray and Ian Barry, were on trial for the murder of George Cornell. The remaining 8 men sat in front of the jury, awaiting their trial for the murder of Jack McVitie.
Ian Barry had to sit through the whole trial of the evidence against the gruesome evidence in the case of McVitie. It was nothing to do with him, and similarly, the other defendants like Bender, Whitehead, the Lambrianos had to sit through something that didn't concern them at all. And of course, in my view, it was tainted and prejudicial. I don't think it's happened since or would ever happen again.
Well, it's one of the great trials of the 20th century. One of the great criminal trials. It's a great show trial. It was a mafia trial. And they conducted like a mafia trial right from the very beginning when the police convoy brought them into the Old Bailey. Each of the jurors had a policeman to be responsible for him. The convoy coming up from, I think it was Brixton Prison every day, was enormous, sirens every day. It had been announced before the trial that it would take a different route each day for security.
It was really the police, or the Home Office through the police, trying to pretend to the jury that they were likely to be mobbed at any moment by someone representative of this gang. The mere fact that the leaders were all in jail and all on trial didn't mean there wasn't a big gang threatening them all the time.
the security that was adopted in bringing them to court and taking them away was absolutely necessary. We were talking about two people and a gang who committed brutal murders, and there was no possibility that they could be allowed to be conveyed to court in any other way.
Oh, it's incredible. Sirens and motorbikes. I mean, we used to get to the Old Bailey in record time, 16 minutes, I think, from Brixton Prison to the Old Bailey. These screaming sirens and motorbike outriders, the Krays are coming, there'd be crowds everywhere.
And holding back 30 or 40 people at the end of the road, don't go down there, it's too dangerous, we're all in a van for a buck.
I'm sure that the jury and everybody around it was affected by the heavy security.
Of course it tainted the jury. I mean, all the whole circus must have tainted them.
And there's a lot of politics going on behind the scenes which we didn't know about. Like media coverage, which was it wasn't of our making.
Every single night the television had come on, the news, we'd be on the news. Every single night. Now, it was a trial by publicity.
Today, many judges would have reported newspapers handed to television for contempt. The Krays, in my view, were killed by publicity.
They're convicted before you even kick a ball. Games and nets.
We made our own minds up that we're not going to be any part of them, which we wasn't.
Yeah.
And there's no way on God's earth that we're going to use their solicitor, their barristers. And so we picked our barrister and our solicitor, and we went our separate ways.
It was established early on by his counsel that he was going to give evidence, and the substance of that would be that he was under duress from the Krays during the whole of this exercise, and that took away from him his freedom of action.
Well, it was terrifying because there was 10 of us in the dock, and I was the only one there pleading for myself. The rest was as a mob, and I had to be really on my toes going in and out of the dock every day.
I think really and truly there was so much evidence against them. The twins should have put their hands up and said, look, we'll take it, because they was apparently offered the deal that you take it, like you put your hands up to it, and all the rest can walk.
They expected them to go down with them. That was their sort of like a death wish they had, We're going down, you've got to come down with us, we'll go together. That's not right. They wasn't responsible for what the twins did.
When each of them was arrested, I interviewed them and said, look, this is your one opportunity. You will never get another. I'm telling you now that I'm going to charge the Krays with murder, and there may be other cases as well. You've now got the opportunity, if you choose, to come on the side of law and order, to make a statement to me and tell me all you know about the Krays, and this is the only opportunity you'll get.
All of a sudden, you've got their own cousin, Ronnie Hart, done the right grassing anyway. He's told them exactly what's happened, and about half a dozen more of the so-called heavyweights on the firm have all grasped one another and grasped the twins.
Well, this was a disgusting trial in that sense, that the number of people who were singing, betraying, it was really grotesque. And people who I'd met 6 months before as staunch friends, buddies, allies, whatever they were, of the Krays, members of the firm, which is it was a load of nonsense. There was really no such thing. They were a rabble. But all these guys, and suddenly there they were, large as life, saying how dreadful the Krays had been.
I pleaded guilty because I had no chance. The charge was harbouring Frank Mitchell. And I told him what it was all about. And then he says, can you tell me about the Cornell? I said, yeah.
And Ronnie said, we got Scotch Jack is going to take Cornell's murder. Ronnie Hart is going to take Jack the Act. And we want you to take Frank Mitchell. So I thought about it just for a few seconds, and I said, no, I ain't having that.
Of course, you can't ask a man to do that. What sane man's got to say, yeah, I'll put my hands up to a murder and get a life sentence for something I've not committed? I mean, it's ridiculous to even think it, you know. Of course, he had to roll over.
The loyalty of all the other gang members is something that's quite remarkable. They did not want to dissociate themselves with the Krays and in that way appear unloyal, because this was the structure, this was the society.
We're loyal to the culture. We're loyal to the friends that we've always known, the people we drink with, the people we eat with, the people we piss and shit with. You understand? Not the Krays.
I put them before my own family. You know, and Chris just had to go along with it, whether he liked it or not. That was chosen by went down that road. And there was no going back.
They didn't have to go down. They could have done what Albert done and what I done. They thought, well, the twins will get us off with this. They've got good lawyers, good barristers, plenty of money about. Plenty of money about for them. God knows what they paid. The rest of them had to get legal aid.
Did your counsel ever suggest diminished responsibility?
They done it indirectly. The message did come down the line, if I wanted diminished responsibility. But of course it would have been a way to go with it first and do it afterwards.
And you didn't want that?
No.
Why?
Because there was nothing there. Nothing there, just wanted me your way. And morally, for me it wasn't right morally. I couldn't go against my brother, so that was it.
So you think that if you'd have taken their offer, they then would have wanted you to damage Ronnie's case?
I'm sure that would have been the case, yeah.
No, diminished responsibility does not apply to someone who says I never did it. It's as long as say there's an alibi and self-defense. You can't both. If he said, yes, I did it, then we look into what the state of his mind was at the time. But he always denied he did any of the offences.
Justice Melford Stevenson was legendary for imposing long sentences with terse and often corrosive remarks. He had acquired a reputation as Britain's toughest judge, terrifying defendants and barristers alike.
I thought he was just the judge for the case. I was very impressed by him because he brooked no interference, he stood no nonsense, and he made sure that people knew that he was the judge, it was his trial and things were going to go as he wanted it, and they did, and I think the jury were very impressed by him.
The first day of the trial, we go in there and the defendants come up into the dock, and Mr. Justice Melford Stevenson actually has prepared, I think, 6x6 cardboard cutouts and expects each defendant to wear one around the neck with a number. I thought that was done purely to humiliate them, and in my view, very, very, very disgraceful.
He decided to put numbers on us with pink ribbons.
He said that they was confused with who was sitting in the dock. You know, they sat there looking at us long enough for 6 months. They should, they knew who we were, all right.
He wanted to call us number 1 and number 2 and number whatever, you know?
I was the first one to say, well, I think it's a cattle market here, you know. To get these off, you're not putting that round my neck.
They arranged that all of them, on the count of 3, should take them off and throw them down. I remember them rehearsing this, telling us they were planning this and rehearsing it in the cells. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Throw them down, boy.
But unfortunately for me, my counsel said, Tony, don't take yours off. You know, because we all like this, because throw them. He said, no. And he begged me not to part with mine. And I had to sit there with mine while all the chaps started tearing theirs up.
I've been doing criminal law for nearly 40 years. And I've never come across any case where any judge has behaved in that manner. I'm sorry to say, judges are supposed to be the pillars of society. He was a high court judge, and I think throughout the trial he treated everyone with contempt, besides the prosecution. but it was totally unfair.
Oh yes, he tried to undermine our points and to underscore the points made for the prosecution. There's no doubt of that, but that's within the scope of a wayward judge anyway.
If any good point was being said by defence witness, the judge would turn to the jury and literally smirk and turn his eyebrows up. Things like that don't go on transcript, unfortunately, and so it's very difficult to lodge an appeal on those grounds, but it happened. Everyone saw it.
Well, you hear that, members of the jury? You know, the nod and wink, as it were. You see what they're after. You see what the defence is after now. That sort of comment.
The judge was continuously rude to John Platts-Mills, quite unnecessarily, and I think it got to a stage one day Ronnie jumped up in the dock and shouted at the judge, "You leave him alone, he's doing all right."
The thing that struck me most at the time, which was quite odd, was the class aspect. I found something deeply unpleasant about it. It was much more than just a murder trial. It was as though the upper classes had rounded on these two upstarts and thought they'd teach them a jolly good lesson, which they did. I think Reggie was aware of what was going to happen to him at the trial. He certainly was. He looked absolutely haunted. He looked terrible. But Ronnie was as smug as a bug in a rug. Happy. I think he loved all the eyes upon him, yes. And you would have thought, and the way he came in each day, came up the stairs and looked to the public gallery. I mean, as though he was in the theatre. I think he enjoyed it.
He said something like, "You can understand that if I wasn't here now, I'll be having tea with Judy Garland."
Ronnie saw me from the dock, and he wrote me a little note, which I still got, because I thought it was so funny, saying, "Dear Miss Lethbridge, you are more beautiful than ever. When I get out of this, I'm going to take you to the moon."
Many a time during the trial, Ronnie was asleep in the afternoons, and he was asleep to the point that he was snoring. Reggie, on the other hand, was very intense and very attentive to everything.
Reggie went into the box and said that this was a conspiracy between Superintendent Reed and the Home Secretary to get the Krays put away. Well, even if that was a thought, it wasn't the way to introduce it.
He was always very particular throughout the case, before and after and during the trial, what the public thought of them. He always was concerned, what did they say about us outside?
Ronnie Kray couldn't make up his mind whether he was going to give evidence or not. And eventually the judge got a bit upset and said, "Now, Mr. Platts-Mills, is your client going into the witness box or not?" And then Ronnie shouted, "I'm going into the witness box." And in he went. And of course he made an utter fool of himself.
Yes, Ronnie should never have got into the witness box. Because he just couldn't control his temper. In cross-examination about anything, he would flare up. He cut his own throat, really.
Ken Jones said to him, "Weren't you known as the Colonel? Isn't that a title that you've adopted for yourself?" He said, "That may or may not be," he said, "but you're a fat slob."
Jones stood there and just let it sink in, and let it sink in with the jury, I'm sure, because Ronnie was screaming and excited and just showing himself to be the sort of man who would, on a whim, shoot or knife somebody. And I'm sure Jones enjoyed every bit of being called a slob at that moment. I think we all know who the slob was, don't we? The fat slob by then, and he was fat, overweight, and not looking very good, was Ronnie Kray.
Ronnie was in the box. Milford said to him, "Mr. Kray, I think you've only said two things in the whole of your evidence. The first is the prosecutor's a big fat slob, and next, that I'm prejudiced against you, because I certainly am."
Mr. Foreman, I want you to ask me simply by saying yes or no. Have you all reached a verdict in the case of Ronald Kray in the first indictment? Yes. Have you we reached a second indictment? Yes. And then went back to say, and then how do you find Roger? And he said, guilty. And then he said, guilty. And I was looking down like this, and I couldn't look up. My eyes were full of tears. It was a bit of a, all of the work that we'd done was justified.
Ronnie Kray, 30 years. Ian Barry, 20 years. Ronnie Bender, 20 years. Reggie Kray, 30 years. Charles Kray, 10 years. Tony Barry, acquitted being under duress. Chris Lambriano, 15 years. Freddie Foreman, 10 years. Tony Lambriano, 15 years. Connie Whitehead, 7 years.
Well, the judge was so carried away by the duty he felt he had to put down the whole tribe that he dished out to the lesser members as well. I never thought that Milford would swing with such violence.
I wasn't surprised at the sentences in any way. A gang of people that had ruled the East End of London by a regime of terror and fear had killed people coldly, analytically, motivelessly, in full view of other people, simply because they wanted to exercise their authority as gang leaders.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please join our Facebook group. It's called Krays Crime Lords of London. We're a friendly, moderated group with over 1,000 Kray and other celebrated gangster videos available for view. There's also thousands of images in the photos sections. The link for the group is in the YouTube description section. I hope we see you there soon.